How does one go about interpreting myths? Emperor Julian says that the fact that there are certain cryptic elements about myths that aren't apparently clear is evidence that they, of course, require interpretation. He was a neoplatonist, a pagan, part of the last rebellion of paganism in Rome against Christianity. Now, if you want to know about all the different interpretations, the main schools of interpreting myth that arose in the modern era, in modern scholarship, and how a lot of them are wrong, you need to watch the video I did on interpreting myths very recently, which is only accessible to patrons, and you can see it on my Patreon channel. Once you become a patron, you'll be able to see it. And it's about an hour long, and I go through each of the schools and dispelling the nonsense of naturalism, which is essentially a modernistic view, but has existed in certain points in history, as is evidenced by pagans criticizing them for their foolishness, most notably the Egyptians. Although the Egyptian religion was originally a very complex, esoteric, metaphysical worldview, it did degenerate towards the end, towards the Roman era, when the Romans were in charge of Egypt, to a bunch of superstitions, and they reduced gods to mere representations of physical phenomena, which is something that the Romans, or at least the patrician caste of Romans, criticized the Egyptians for. And it's no wonder, when such a degenerate form of religion was practiced in Egypt, that Christianity took over and the peasants just no longer accepted it, and the burning of the Library of Alexandria and things like that occur when you have the degeneration of a tradition. Of course, there is a school of interpreting myths in recent times that I approve of, which I say so in the video, and that's firstly the traditionalist school, and then also any other metaphysical interpretations of myth, although some of the materialists have useful interpretations as well, because one myth can have multiple layers of meaning, one pertaining to a physical reality, another historical reality, and another yet more advanced is a metaphysical reality. But we don't need to restrict our study of myth to recent scholarship, because there were contemporary pagan people who were actually discussing mythology and the meaning of myth in pagan times. And who better to trust on the subject of interpreting pagan myth than an actual pagan in pagan times? One such pagan was Sallust, and another was Proclus, both of them Neoplatonists. And in this book I have some great quotes from Sallust about understanding and interpreting myth that I'd like to share with you. Firstly, the argument is that fables or myths are of divine origin. Since all beings rejoice in similitude and are averse from dissimilitude, it is necessary that discourses concerning the gods should be as similar to them as possible, that they may become worthy of their essence, and they may render the gods propitious to those who discourse concerning them, all which can only be effected by fables. Fables therefore imitate the gods, according to effable and ineffable, unapparent and apparent, wise and ignorant, and this likewise extends to the goodness of the gods. For as the gods impart the goods of sensible natures in common to all things, but the goods resulting from intelligibles to the wise alone, so fables assert to all men that there are gods, but who they are and of what kind, they alone manifest to such as are capable of exalted a knowledge. So exalted a knowledge. In fables too, the energies of the gods are imitated, for the world may very properly be called a fable, since bodies and the corporeal possessions which it contains are apparent, but souls and intellects are occult and invisible. So you can see that he's saying that the myths themselves have these multiple layers I mentioned for that purpose, because there are different levels of humanity capable of different levels of understanding. Now, a myth has to serve, and a religion serves all levels of society, not just the highest. The highest are entrusted with those who are entrusted with the most high knowledge, but there are those who will never be capable of such knowledge, yet they are also requiring the knowledge of the gods. And at the most basic level, all myths tell of the truth of the gods, which is the truth of divinity, the truth of the metaphysical aspect of reality. There's a little robin hopping around me. Sallust continues, why do adulteries, thefts, paternal bonds, and other unworthy actions are celebrated in fables? We see this in Norse mythology, don't we? People cross-dressing and raping and all kinds of things that we consider transgressive, and they were considered transgressive at the time as well, because we know that both rape of someone within your society, cross-dressing, murder were all illegal in the Norse law code. So why were they then celebrated by the gods in myth? Well, that's not an unworthy question to ask, actually. It's a question, according to Sallust, worthy of admiration. Because when there is an apparent absurdity, the soul immediately conceiving these discourses to be concealments may understand that the truth which they contain is to be involved in profound and occult silence. The very fact that there are transgressive elements in the myths and the behaviors of these divine entities, which can only be good, is evidence that there is another layer of meaning that you must interpret. There are different types of myths, according to Sallust. 5 specifically, and he gives examples of each. Of fables, some are theological, others physical, others animastic, or belonging to the soul, that means, and others material. And lastly, others, mixed from these, are theological, which employ nothing corporeal, but speculate the very essences of the gods, such as the fable which asserts that Saturn devoured his children, for it obscurely intimates the nature of an intellectual god, since every intellect returns into itself. But we speculate fables physically when we speak concerning the energies of the gods about the world, as when considering Saturn the same as time, and calling the parts of time the children of the universe. We assert that the children are devoured by their parents. But we employ fables in an animastic mode when we contemplate the energies of the soul, because the intellections of our souls, though by discursive energy they proceed into other things, yet abide in their parents. Lastly, fables are material, such as the Egyptians ignorantly employ at the time of his writing, considering and calling corporeal natures divinities, such as Isis, Earth, Osiris, humility, Typhon, heat, or again denominating Saturn water, Adonis fruits, and Bacchus wine. And indeed, to assert that these are dedicated to the gods in the same manner as herbs, stones, and animals is part of wise men. That's the part of wise men. But to call them gods is alone the province of madmen, unless we speak in the same manner as when, from established custom, we call the orb of the sun and its rays the sun itself. And we see this today in modern pagans who have completely misunderstood paganism and seek to interpret a materialist essence to the gods. These aren't really pagans, they are mad people. They're completely insane. And then he goes on to give an example of how to interpret myth in such a way. Now, this myth's interpretation, he says that these teachings aren't for the lowest of men, nor are they for the highest of men. They are for the middle sort of men, those who are not beyond learning, those who are capable of high knowledge, but those who have not yet gone to the very highest. And he gives an example of one of the mixed kind of fables, as in the fable which relates that Discord at a banquet of the gods threw a golden apple, and that a dispute about it arising among the goddesses, they were sent by Jupiter to take the judgment of Paris, who, charmed with the beauty of Venus, gave her the apple in preference to the rest. For in this fable the banquet denotes the supermundane powers of the gods, and on this account they subsist in conjunction with each other, but the golden apple denotes the world, which on account of its composition from contrary natures is not improperly said to be thrown by discord or strife. But again, since different gifts are imparted to the world by different gods, they appear to contest with each other for the apple, and a soul living according to sense, that is sensual perception, such as Paris, not perceiving other powers in the universe, asserts that the contended apple subsists alone through the beauty of Venus. But of these species of fables, such as are theological belong to philosophers, the physical and animastic to poets, but the mixed to initiatory rites, since the intention of all mystic ceremonies is to conjoin us with the world and the gods. This was a great example of myth, and that the actual way of interpreting myth is not just merely like the Egyptians did, look for a parallel in some physical phenomena, like, the changing of the seasons or pregnancy. This is a very, very primitive worldview, very backward worldview. And it's nothing to do with the real meaning of pagan religions, that all Indo-European religions and many other pagan religions had these higher aspects. And that is actually the motivation for religion. What is the reason that mankind has myth? Why does he seek to know the gods? Why does he have gods? Because he knows that this physical realm is evidence of something beyond, something that created it, something that is superior to it. All religion serves this function. Only a fool would try and reduce the immaterial to the level of the material, the superior to the level of the inferior. Someone who is incapable of perceiving the superior. That is what the intellect is. The intellect is not merely the rational faculties, which are directed, that should be directed by the intellect. The intellect is a divine intuition. Having explained myth and the different levels of meaning and the different types of man who are capable of understanding these different levels of meaning, we now come to that area of paganism which is universal to all men, not just to the highest, but to all. And that is rite and ritual, very important. As was said previously, the function of ritual is to conjoin man with the gods. We strive to be one with them. So why do we sacrifice? What is the meaning of sacrifice? And also, why do we honor gods who may not actually be affected by us? They're not interested in us in that way, like the Christian idea of an all-loving, benevolent God. We pagans do not see gods having this, being impacted so by our actions on earth. They are largely indifferent. If indifferent, a Christian may ask, why do you placate them? Why do you pray to them? You cannot change a God. Let us hear what Sallust has to say. Why we honor the gods who are not indigent of anything. From hence we are presented with a solution of the doubts concerning sacrifices and other particulars relative to the cultivation of divinity. For that which is divine is not indigent of anything, but the honours which we pay to the gods are performed for the sake of our advantage. And since the providence of the gods is everywhere extended, a certain habitude or fitness is all that is requisite in order to receive their beneficent communications. But all habitude is produced through imitation and similitude, and hence temples imitate the heavens, but altars the earth. Statues resemble life, and on this account they are similar to animals, and prayers imitate that which is intellectual, but characters, superior, ineffable, powers, herbs and stones resemble matter, and animals which are sacrificed, the irrational life of our souls. But from all these, nothing happens to the gods beyond what they already possess. For what accession can be made to the divine nature, but a conjunction with our souls and the gods is by this means produced. We are bringing ourselves and our souls in union with the gods through the act of sacrifice, because this animal that we sacrifice, or whatever you wish to symbolize, the soul and our time on earth, that is given up to the gods. They don't need it because they already have everything. They are everything. Now, to go on more on sacrifice. Concerning sacrifices and other honours which are of no advantage to the gods but are useful to men. But I think it will be proper to add a few things concerning sacrifices. And in the first place, since we possess everything from the gods, and it is but just to offer the first fruits of gifts to the givers, hence, of our possessions we offer the first fruits through consecrated gifts of our bodies, through ornaments, and of our life, through sacrifices. Besides, without sacrifices, prayers are words only. But accompanied with sacrifices, they become animated words, and words indeed corroborating life, but life animating the words. Add too that the felicity of everything is its proper perfection, but the proper perfection with its cause, and on this account we pray that we may be conjoined with the gods. Since therefore life primarily subsists in the gods, and there is also a certain human life, but the latter desires to be united with the former, a medium is required. For natures much distant from each other cannot be conjoined without a medium. And it is necessary that the medium should be similar to the connecting natures. Life, therefore, must necessarily, by the medium of life, and hence men of the present day that are happy, and all the ancients, have sacrificed animals, and this indeed not rashly, but in a manner accommodated to every god, and many other ceremonies respecting the cultivation of divinity, and thus much concerning sacrifices and the worship of the gods. If you wish to be a pagan in this time, and there are a great many obstacles and difficulties that you will face if you choose to follow this path, one of the greatest problems that we must face is reconstructing what was lost, because Christians have cast out so much. They have left us only with the very exoteric aspects of rituals and the raw myths in some cases, particularly in the Germanic case. How fortunate we are then that we have sources such as the Neoplatonists to help us to interpret them. And also wise men of recent times, those belonging to the traditionalist school, such as Julius Evola, who have understood the true meaning of myth. Please, please, please discard the nonsense of naturalistic interpretation of myth, because you will be in great error, and you're gambling with that greatest possession you have, your own soul. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Thomas Rousel. This is Survive the Jive. If you like my channel, please click subscribe and take a look through some of the other videos. I've got a load of them, and I've been doing this for years. If you really like them and you want to help me to keep doing these videos, then I ask that you send me a donation via PayPal or become a patron on Patreon, and then you'll have access to some of the exclusive videos, such as that one I already mentioned about modern interpretations of myths that are wrong. Thank you very much, and goodbye.